Hi there. Let's do your review sheet on glaciers by labeling different glacial features according to this diagram. So a cirque is like almost a bowl-shaped basin, so this would be a cirque right there. And a horn is like a peak, so there's an example of a horn. A large ridge is an arête, so that might be this right here. So the horn is right there. A U-shaped valley is what happens when glaciers carve out. And so let's point out a U-shaped valley would be this label right there. A crevasse is like a crack or a fracture in the glacier. There's a crevasse. Outwash is water that leaves a glacial lake, so there's your outwash. A moraine is kind of a ridge left behind by glacial till, so there's your moraine. Meltwater is basically this right here, meltwater. So the melting glacier leaves kind of almost like a lake. And an esker is a ridge, okay, a winding ridge right here. So an esker. Next it wants to know, oops, go back up. Next it wants to know how could a continental glacier like Antarctica be called an ice cap? Technically no, ice caps are much smaller in size. So, for example, an ice cap is usually associated with the breaking off of an iceberg. Next, let's talk about more glacial features. In what two ways is a glacier like a river? Well, glaciers move, or sometimes we say they flow. So they might flow forward down a mountain like a river, so gravity kind of carries the glacier that way, and we call that advancing. And so it's very much like a river. Plus, glaciers erode the landscape like a river. So two major features. Next, what's the difference between some of these terms? So first one, an advancing versus a retreating glacier. So a retreating glacier is basically melting and going up the mountain. An advancing glacier is building, so it's moving down the mountain due to gravity. What's the difference between an ice pack or packed ice and an iceberg? Sorry, let's go back to this term. Ice caps, my fault. Ice caps are glaciers that form an extensive area that's flat. So Antarctica could be considered an ice cap, okay? So sorry about that. Let's go back to, let's talk about an ice field. An ice field is an upland area of ice that feeds two or more glaciers, like the Columbia ice field, where a glacier can just be one single one. So an ice field is many glaciers combined, like the Columbia ice field, I think, is made of 3 large glaciers, or maybe more, sorry, 6, I think. Ice fall. Well, an ice fall where a glacier flows over a cliff, breaks apart, and falls. So very similar to a waterfall, except this one's frozen and this one's not. And a valley glacier versus continental. Valley glaciers occur in, of course, the mountainous regions, and they might go up or down the mountain. Continental glaciers are very flat, and they're larger in size, and they cover a whole continent. Next, what's the difference between an ice pack versus an iceberg? An ice pack is a sheet of ice that is rarely more than about 5 meters thick. So a sheet of ice that's about 5 meters thick. Okay, whereas icebergs are large chunks of ice that might break loose from a continental glacier. So these are much larger, and they might break loose. We call that calve, and they can move away. And that's your review of some important glacial terms. Thank you.